Yeah, well, I don't know, Fred might come, but we have a quorum.
Move to open the meeting at 7:03.
Second.
I think it was a tie.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, let's see. Are we all set?
You're live.
We're all set? We're on?
You're live.
Thank you, Jason.
All right, so the first thing on our agenda is we have no hearings tonight, which is unusual. And normally, we probably would have not had a meeting tonight. But we're trying to get this on the agenda for a month or so, so we had to do it tonight. So this is the community preservation project funded a couple, 2 or 3 years ago about looking at VZ Park governance, looking at things closely, the finances, who runs it, what we do there. And so that's what is going to be presented, is the report on this from our consultant, who is on Zoom there. So why don't you go ahead, take it over.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so sorry I can't be with you in person tonight. For the record, Emily Ennis of Ennis Associates. I'm also here with my colleague Madge Pate, who's been working with me on this project. This has been an exciting project. VZ Memorial Park is such an amazing asset for the town. You obviously, as the Conservation Commission, have the custody, care, and control of this property, and you've been doing a lot with it. So our focus was exactly as Chair Dempsey just said, to look into how it's being managed now, who's involved, what they're doing, are there any options based on what other communities are doing with similar types of properties. And the report was actually mostly finished last spring into summer, but we, in conversations back and forth, we wanted to have some caterers look at this, and the decision was made right about the time that the caterers were having their busiest periods. So we waited until January, which turned out to be a great time to not have holidays and weddings, and so we were able to get several catering firms to come in and have a look and see. Partly it was almost marketing to let them know it was available, and partly to get a sense of what they thought might be valuable. So that is the addition to the report. So what I thought I would do, with your permission, is just walk you through kind of a very high level of what the contents of the report are. If you have any questions tonight, answer those questions, or if there are ones that we need to do, no further delving into, make sure we get you those answers and go from there. So with that, we obviously introduced the report and why we're doing this. And as Chair Dempsey said, this was a result of a community preservation committee grant. Our findings and recommendations, which are just there for you to review and see if they make sense. We then delve into the existing conditions that led to those findings and recommendations, and then provided precedence options and additional resources for you to consider. This isn't a vision plan. In other words, it's not you have this park, this is what the park should become. It's more about the operating structure of the park, what you have now, what you might want to consider in terms of how that operating structure could just be firmed up a little bit and just roles made a little bit more clear. We did do last April 2024, we did a stakeholder focus group. You'll see some pictures from that, where we brought a number of people who have connections to VZ together to understand what their thoughts were about the park, what it had been, what it could become. and thoughts about the governance. So we had a really wide-ranging discussion that provided valuable input to this. So, and here, in fact, is a picture of that meeting and some of the people who were gathered there to discuss the town, to discuss the property. So, in terms of the background, just how did the town, how did the Conservation Commission, get this property at a very high level? Who are the people involved? So, Mike Dempsey, of course, has been hugely active and has done just so much involvement with this, and so much time and effort, which is just amazing, and his expertise was really helpful. So thank you, Mike. But also Vanessa Lopez, Doug Soper, Carol Funchian, and of course the Friends of the VZ Park themselves, the Groveland Gardening Club, and the Master Gardeners. So you can see why we had so many people involved in this, and in the stakeholders meeting. There's just a lot of people who have a passion for the park and for what's going on there. This is just a list of the people that we talked to, that we invited on site walks, at the focus group, and then the information we received, some of your own resources, the trail brochure for VZ, and just as an example of some of the information that's out there, there's also a website which I had a look at again recently. So in terms of our finding and recommendations, there's a couple of activities that are happening in VZ Memorial Park. There is housing on the site, which is rented out, and so there's some information about that. There are events that happen on the site, information about those events and some thoughts around them. The sites have to be maintained, as not only the many buildings that are on the site, but the gardens, the rewilding project that's happening. And so there's facilities management as well. And then there's some public facing engagement with the website and other information that goes out there. We also looked at the legal status, so the conservation restriction and recreation agreement, and the financial status, looking at the revolving fund, expenditures out of the revolving fund, and breaking those down into a sort of proto budget that looked at the housing side and the events management side. So that's delved into. We did not look at that beyond the original report. So obviously fiscal 2025 has ended, but we stopped with the fiscal 2024 budget and the and actuals, and then the fiscal 2025 budget, but not the actuals. So just know that we have not updated that since last summer. We've made a summary of recommendations. We suggest looking at the housing authority to manage the rental of the properties, presenting that for consideration, because that's what the housing authority does. So that might be something interesting to look at that. Right now you have 3 1099 employees, and we recommend looking at a W-2 employee. That's just a different level of control, and then look at to whom that employee should report on a day-to-day basis. It's very, very hard for committees to have employees report to them, because if you have to make an immediate decision, then you have to try and get everybody together to make that decision. So in many communities, it's kind of a best practice for employees to report up to the town administrator, who then reports to the select board. So we've made that suggestion. And then there are 2 models for events management. One is Camp Dennison that we talk about in here. One is the Stevens Estate, and we provide those models later in the document. We also recommend that you, the Conservation Commission, should appoint an oversight board as the governing boards. So again, it's very difficult for a committee to do day-to-day work. So maybe, and it's especially difficult for somebody like a Conservation Commission that have so many other responsibilities to spend a lot of time in meeting looking at something like this. So having a board that could report back to you at designated points would kind of streamline your own operations. So to consider that, and Town of Georgetown's Camp Dennison Committee is an example of this. made some recommendations about the structure of the budget, the structure of the website, and linking the town's website to the VZ Park website. So there's a link that talks about how this works. And actually, the Groveland Council on Aging has a really good example of how to link an outside website to the town website. So thinking of that. Friends of VZ Park done amazing work for VZ Memorial Park, very invested in it. We would recommend having a more formal agreement with them. I think certainly in things that we've seen with the webpage and with other discussions that we had with phone calls to stakeholders, it's sometimes not easy to tell where the Conservation Commission's responsibilities begin and end versus Friends of VZ Park. You know that, they know that, but not everybody else knows that. So just figuring out better ways of making that clear to people. And really using them, they've got creative community programming, they have excellent capacity for fundraising, working with them to really focus on their strengths and how they can support VZ Memorial. So there's some recommendations for that. So then with the existing conditions, I'll sort of go through some of this a little bit quickly. We just read through all the existing legal agreements so we could document in kind of less legal language what was allowed, what wasn't allowed, and what that meant. And so you had the overall conservation restriction and recreation easement. There's an agreement with the Department of Fish and Game. There's the Treetop Summer Camp at the time. There are the residential leases. And then we started talking about how, as I mentioned earlier, sort of high level, how the public, how people who aren't familiar with VZ Memorial come across it primarily online and what they see and understand based on the two websites. We then, as I mentioned, went into the budget comparisons for the information that was provided to us of how the revolving fund works, and we broke it out into the housing activities and the event rentals to kind of see more clearly what was happening with the different activities on the site that had a budget. So that information is there. And then we broke it into a statement of cash flows. May not be well known, but I didn't actually start out as a planner. I started out in the finance and accounting field. So it's kind of nice to get my hands on a budget again. Usually I'm just doing my own. And then talking about the resources that Friends of VZ Park have and what they've been able to contribute. We also wanted to delve into not just the operating budget, but the capital budget. Whenever you have buildings, you have capital needs. And so Friends of VZ had just done an extensive research on Lucille's Cottage. So we were able to get a real sense of the capital needs for that. There were also some other information in there about capital improvement summary budget from the town. So we were able to summarize that. There weren't as many specific costs of that, but we at least knew what was available. And then finally, into the existing conditions, we had in March, we reached out to the caterers in January. In March, we were able to have 2 days where Madge actually worked with the staff at VZ Memorial to have a bunch of caterers come through. So we made an assessment here of their feedback, and then there's an appendix that has we followed up with the questionnaire, and that appendix has all of the answers to the questionnaire, but we broke it into facility conditions, kitchen needs, overall needs, and then suggestions around pricing and booking. I will say for the ones that I was there for, Madge was there for all of them, and also based on what we heard from the follow-up, people were very excited about the site, less excited about the buildings themselves. And so a lot of caterers would just want to have a tent and bring their own equipment and facility to the tent rather than using the inside. We did have a couple that said that there were spaces that they could use inside, but most of them were very, very excited about the grounds. There was some creative thinking around that. So with that, we did look, I mentioned Camp Dennison and the Stevens Estate. So Camp Dennison is town of Georgetown. Stevens Estate, Town of North Andover. So we looked at them very specifically as models, but we also looked at a couple of other sort of Essex County sites that would make sense for comparisons, and broke it down again, events, the uses of the park as a whole, whether or not the buildings were rented and which buildings were available, and the different amenities that they had. So you see VZ at the top here, and then the other ones being compared to VZ. We also looked at costs of the town-owned regional community spaces. So who owned it, what were the funding options, were there membership fees, what were the rental rates, any other notes that we could find online. And it was for the same. And then looking at the other model, the Stevens Estate model, some other communities that have similar types, and again, their costs for rentals and anything else. So we did a pro and con of the Camp Dennison model versus the Stevens Estate model, and then also looked at kind of the existing Friends of VZ and staff management for the 1099 staff. Looked at different ways. These all came out of the stakeholder meetings, different uses and activities that can happen. So community events, revenue, and other. We looked at the facility needs that people identified from the stakeholders group, and then we looked at funding resources. And then finally the appendix of all of the information we provided the town with the stakeholders. I will say one of the things that really came through in the stakeholders meeting was the balance of wanting to make sure that VZ Memorial was still very much available for community use. There are certainly some facilities out there where they're primarily event facilities. The community obviously can rent them, but it is very sort of outward focused. And we heard over and over again the desire to make sure that VZ Memorial remained as, event rental was a great idea to bring in revenue and support the activities, but they wanted to make, many people we heard from wanted to make sure that there was still the opportunity for the community to be really involved in the use and access to the park as a whole. So I just wanted to, as you're reading through this and seeing the different models, just know that there was that kind of balance of how much do you retain for community use and access versus how much are you using it to help generate the revenue to support the maintenance of the buildings, the capital needs, and the maintenance of the site. So that's really what we have. Happy to answer any questions. Hope you all have had a chance to read and review this. And just to follow up to say again, we really enjoyed working on this project with the town and with the people who were so dedicated to the park. So thank you again.
Anyone have any questions? So, one question I have is, I would say that our biggest problem is capital needs, right? And this is ongoing. We've been able to take care of many of the things either by applying for community preservation money, or having the Friends of VZ raise money for us and then pay for things. So 2 examples that I will give is, we had to, the original driveway and parking lots were in terrible shape when the town bought it, and they only continued to get more terrible until we were able to get a grant of about $100,000 from CPA money and have them repaved. And so that's one example. We've had a number of CPA grants pay for things, but that's one way of getting things fixed. The other one being the Friends. So recently, the Friends ended up spending a little over $20,000 to put a new roof on our barn and attached garage and do some other repairs to the roofing structure there in that building. So, you know, those are good ways of dealing with capital needs, but, you know, we still face things like, you know, getting a paint job of the entire place, or taking care of lead paint removal, or window replacement. You know, these are things that certainly cannot come out of our operating funds, but yet it's not that sexy a thing to put a CPA proposal in for new windows at 199 Washington Street. You know, that would be a hard ask of the residents to do a CPA proposal for. Not to say that it shouldn't be or wouldn't qualify, but just, you know, people aren't going to get that excited about that kind of thing. But yet, you know, that's even a big ask, probably $50,000 or $60,000 from the Friends of Easy. Even they aren't generating that much money. So the question I have is this, that really, shouldn't the town be putting aside money like they do for every other town building, for buildings at VZ Park, to take care of some of these things?
You know, you hit, I think, on one of the hardest things for something like this is that you know, anytime you have buildings, you're going to have capital expenses, right? I mean, you just have to extrapolate from those of us who may be listening who are homeowners, think of all the bills we have to pay. Now extrapolate that to a much larger building and multiple buildings. And certainly, these buildings are older buildings, so they have many, many issues. I think just the report on Lucille's Cottage identified that. So there's a couple of things I think, you know, that is certainly one option. It's hard for municipalities who have these types of facilities because they do have their other town facilities that they need to manage and they need to fund. And so finding resources in an environment where municipal budgets are limited, it's difficult to spread it across multiple properties. So, you know, while certainly some of these items were in the town's capital budget, you know, it is competing with other buildings. And that would be true of any of these municipal ones that we looked at. You know, one thing that I think that came out of the discussions with the caterers that could be interesting, I mentioned that balance of keeping the facility available for public use, but also having the event use. Several caterers mentioned that the pricing wasn't as high as other venues in the area, and I know it's been kept deliberately low because there's been the ability for people to have kind of DIY weddings and affordable weddings there. And that makes a lot of sense. But there were a couple of firms that we had walk through the site whose business is actually working with towns to manage the facilities and the events themselves, and the town gets a portion of the revenue. And so if there was a way to thread the needle, especially since there was much of the interest was in doing events outside and not necessarily entire weekend events, you know, would it be possible to work with either the ones that we interviewed, or I'm sure that there are more out there who do the same thing, to figure out how to increase some of the revenue from events and then have a portion of that be set aside for capital improvements over time, so that some of it's covering operating improvements, but some of it is starting to build up a capital reserve. And I think that's worth continuing to explore. The way the pricing structure is now, it's not enough to cover operating expenses and add to the capital sort of set aside. But if it were, differently managed, and this is where it has to be a conversation, right? To allow for access by all of the interested groups, maybe not all at the same time, but if it were differently managed, that might be more possible. So I think that's worth continuing to explore.
When you said that some of the caterers were interested in the property but not the facility, did they make any recommendations of what aspects needed to be upgraded or expanded? Is that in the report?
Yes, that is in the report. So one of the things that they talked about is back up behind the main house. Is, there's a beautiful view. They would look at putting a tent with a floor down there, running electricity. Some of the caterers just basically bring everything, including stoves, in on being able to roll all their equipment in. So they'd be doing everything right out of the tent. For those who looked inside, some of them noted that they felt that it was a little outdated in terms of how it's set up. The kitchen facilities, they said those were outdated. But again, the people who are making those comments tend to bring their own things anyway. Some of the bathrooms were mentioned as not really, they're still set up as residential bathrooms, which makes perfect sense because it was a house, but they're not necessarily, facility style. So the more in-depth of the recommendations are in there in terms of the types of things that they would suggest doing. And those are the highlights.
So do you think that there may, the easiest thing to pursue would be a catering company who would take over the outdoor back space for the entire summer and just put up a tent, and then, let's say they have 12 weeks of weddings. That sounds like a good way to deal with it. But do you think that's realistic? Is somebody really going to want to do that?
There were two who were interested. So all of the caterers we talked to were interested in doing something on the side, and in fact, some of them had one of them had just booked it for a client, which is wonderful. But there were two who were interested in talking further with the town about how they would do something like that. I think it's worth exploring. I think it's also, that could actually in some ways work quite well if they are doing if they have a tent that's dedicated to weddings, that leaves the main house available for the during the week meetings that have been popular. One of the things we've heard about is the need for additional community space, and so that could continue without having an impact on the wedding operations. And then maybe the wedding operations are part of Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So I would definitely talk with them further about what their needs are, what their schedule is, and how they think that something like that could work. Obviously, in the amount of time that we had a tour and a follow-up, certainly we as consultants were going to go into that level of detail, but I think it would be worth taking that next step and talking to them.
When did that wedding take place?
It was in May. I don't know which one it was.
May of this year?
Yes.
Okay, and was there any feedback? Were they happy with the results?
We followed up right after the March meeting, so we didn't follow up with them after the May wedding. But that would be an interesting idea for, say, any outside caterers over the last, say, 12 months, following up with a questionnaire of how did it go, what did you like, what did you not like. That type of feedback is excellent to get. So that would be worth.
Pretty rainy.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be interesting to see if, after having suggested it, how they felt after actually doing it. Because that would be, that's a real life data point, rather than just, oh, we could do this. It would be, well, we did this happened, this was good, this was bad, we were worried about this, things like that.
Right. We were expecting to do this and we couldn't, or we weren't expecting this, but this was a benefit. Absolutely. I think that would be great. And I'm sure that Vanessa would have a list of the caterers that, have come to the site over the last 12 to even 24 months. That way you get a couple of full seasons to see
And
what
does
that
that
was
fall
like.
under the scope of what you're doing, or is that something extra?
That would be a next step. We actually finished this over a year ago. It was the caterers was an add-on to answer a question that we knew was out there, but so we're actually out of scope at this point.
Right.
Yeah, so we did have a very large outdoor wedding in June, and it went very well. The caterer had multiple tents, dance floor. They brought in bathrooms, and had a whole portable kitchen set up. So it certainly is doable. And I know that Vanessa is in contact with that company, and they may even been one of the companies on this list that came in before. So the other thing is dealing with liquor, and so that also takes it off of the way that we do things now is if you have an event, you have to get a 1-day license, which is fine, but ultimately the people having the wedding bring the liquor in, which really is not the way you want to do it. So we don't get any money because of that. The people buy their own liquor and they distribute it through the caterer or whatever. So if the caterer is able to provide the liquor, which most caterers have a license, then, there's more money generated rather than, people not paying for, other than just paying for the retail cost of liquor.
Yeah, I think that's again something that having those greater in-depth conversations to figure out how does the revenue strategy work? Are you paying a percentage by wedding? Are you paying a flat fee for the entire, season? And it's up to you whether or not you make the profit. Is the town having to rent the tent and different caterers are using it, which means a capital outlay on your side and potential liability. If you're turning it over to a single caterer to manage, are they renting the tent, and therefore that outlay and that liability is on them? So I think there's a lot of in-depth conversations in that next stage that can happen.
Yeah, because, the best thing for us is that we have a single caterer who's willing to come in and they've got exclusive use of that space for, say, 12 weeks. But then it's on them to generate those bookings, and maybe they wouldn't be able to do a wedding a week or something, but then we would negotiate. They just pay the town a certain amount of money regardless of how much business they actually do. So how many caterers are willing to take that risk?
Well, and you mentioned 12 weeks, but in fact, Madge reminded me that one group had yurts on the property. So, as sort of shelters, I would imagine, given the view and the setting, you can have a pretty magical winter wedding up there with a heated tent. So, that's something else to think about is that with that tent, it might. Could possibly give some additional weeks and therefore additional revenue for both you and the caterer. So that's worth exploring there.
Sure.
Yeah. there's also the glamping trend. So, and that's sped its way into different festivities as well. So I think that with the right partner, with the right level of creativity, it could be very interesting while still preserving the local access that people were saying they wanted to have. So,
The, we haven't gone into this that much, but I know that, in the report, you talk about the separation, more of the separation from the Friends of VZ. So those activities have been ongoing over the past year. The Friends is really totally separate from what the commission is doing there. They are working on their own website, so they won't be on our website anymore. And also, the town has a new website, so the plan is that we will eliminate the VZ Park website. We still have the domain name, but it would be an offshoot of the town's website through the town provider. So that's where we're going with that. Trying to think of.
yes, Rebecca mentioned that you'd already started to take some
Yep.
steps like that. So we didn't want to completely rewrite something that was already written, but it's always nice to be able to say, we saw this and we're already moving to take some of those things under consideration. So, and we certainly recognize that some of the recommendations we had there are longer term. Others are easier to put into place, and obviously all require discussion.
Yeah. Any other questions, comments? So we will make sure we get full distribution to our members of the reports, comments and stuff. And, I think through Rebecca, we can do any follow-up questions. But, I certainly appreciate the follow-up that you've been available for over the past year, and coming back with this extra information on the caterers is definitely helpful.
As I said, we really enjoyed working on the project. We always enjoy working with the Groveland community, but this was an unusual project for us. We really enjoyed it. And again, thank you for the opportunity to do this work. We really appreciate it.
And thank you. Thank you.
It's nice to see you, Emily.
Nice to see you all as well.
All right.
Nice.
So, did I send this in the email to
I just
everybody?
have like a summary thing.
Yeah, I sent comments, my comments, but I don't think the trouble was that it was like a huge file.
Oh,
So I think I've made it small enough that I can send it to everybody. So I'll send that out as soon as, tomorrow.
thank you.
And I apologize that we didn't have that.
The summer camp, Treetop Summer Camp. Treetop Summer Camp pays for that time,
Yes.
right?
Yep. They're our biggest
I
renter.
was gonna guess, yeah, well, the camp was very expensive.
Yeah.
I was like, holy cow, they better be paying for this.
Yeah, I forget what exactly they pay, like $3,000 or $4,000 a week, so it's pretty
Okay,
good rent.
well, they get 300 or 400 a family, or per kid,
Yes,
per week, so.
yes.
They should teach them crafts, like how to put new siding up.
Yeah, right.
Painting
Place
buildings.
windows. It would be a
Siding
good
is a
experience for
craft?
them.
With the paintbrush?
These are life skills.
All right.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, that would be a good idea. All right, so moving on, the Salem Street culvert. So I received the emergency order request from Rebecca on July 2nd, so I was able to sign that. So basically, they have the ability to do this work and complete it during the month of July. We did get a permit from Natural Heritage. Their they're not so concerned as long as the pond was lowered significantly and then raised back up within a week or less. And so that's kind of what's going on now.
They were out there this morning.
Yes, so the town did lower the water completely down below the stops, the concrete stops on the dam structure. And I think the company putting the sleeve in started yesterday.
They had a backhoe out there, small one this morning.
Yeah. So I think, based on what somebody there told me on site, they could be done by Friday and then put the stops back in and raise the level, so that's good. So that's going on. Let's see, what else? The Trail Stewardship Program. So I met with the chairman of the Community Preservation Committee, Rebecca, and the chairman of the Rec Committee today to go over what the effect of the trail enhancement project. So the Trail Enhancement Project is a community preservation grant towards enhancing our 4 trails, Meadow Pond, VZ Park, Center Street, Greenway, and Town Forest, and also the Community Trail and the Merrimack River Trail, which is down here along the river. And so I'm going to be having a trail walk with, the chair of the rec committee is going to be taking the lead on this thing. And so he and I, and anyone else who wants to come, are going to be having a walk of as many of these 6 sites as we can do on July 23rd and July 24th. Meeting at VZ Park on July 23rd at 8:30. So if anybody wants to come, let me know.
Can you say again what the goal of the walk is and this collaboration?
Okay, so the goal of the walk is to look at all 6 sites and evaluate kind of what needs to be done.
Okay.
So in this proposal was providing better signage, trail markers,
Right.
bridge repairs where needed, benches, dog waste containers, and trash receptacles. And so as part of that proposal, we put in there, how many of these things, and put them on the maps of each location. But now it's really a matter of adding a lot more, what really needs to be done. So that would be part of the reason for the walk. And hopefully because I think it's going to take 3 years to actually accomplish this work. But the idea would be maybe 2 years, two of the parcels this year, 2 in 2026 and 2 in 27. And, the funding will provide lumber, for fixing the bridges, signage, maps, benches.
Sounds really awesome.
Yeah, it's gonna be,
Yes.
I mean, if we can pull it off, it's gonna really improve the,
So question on the trash side of things. If we're going to
Yes.
put trash receptacles, who is going to be the caretaker of emptying those?
well,
Fire department.
We'll be there for the fire.
Deputy Chief.
only on-call people, not anybody
Full-time.
else. But,
Hey.
no, the highway department, will take on some of this. But, you know, that's kind of the biggest thing is, you know, with all of our facilities, we kind of practice carry in, carry out kind of things. So Rebecca came up with the idea of adding these big belly trash receptacles. And so one of them was put into the grant for the community trail. So we're gonna put one of these things and see how it works. They don't need to be emptied quite so often. They compact the trash, so you might only have to empty it, you know, once a month or something like that.
They're like the ones in the airport.
Yeah,
I think Haverhill has one.
yeah, I
On
know they
Concord
have them
Street.
in Newburyport too. So that's an issue, obviously, because, you know, normal trash containers, we've got them to put them in, but we may end up not doing that if the big belly things work out well, you know, we might be able to use those instead.
Are they solar powered? How are they?
Yeah, I think so. And they're internet connected, so they can send you a signal when they're full. They're kind of amazing things.
That's cool.
But, you know, we've got our normal stewardship program, and I think that Bill volunteered to kind of be in charge of that. So I'm hoping that I can get Bill involved. We've got stewards, we've got a steward at Meadow Pond, we've got a steward for VZ Park, and I think we have a potential steward for the town forest. So, you know, if we just had one more steward, we would be all set, and then be a matter of the rec committee dealing with the other two
You talked to
sites.
Matt about the Merrimack River Trail. He's on that almost every day.
Yeah,
I'll let you hit him up.
yeah, definitely. So that's what's going on with trails. VZ Park updates, not too much to say. You know, you saw last time I gave you the budget and the plan for 2026. And hopefully we can incorporate as a major thing, looking into the caterer for 2026. Because now it's kind of late to, most of the bookings for weddings are out there, you know, most of what's going on, and unless it's like a late thing, is looking at 2026. Yeah. But we've got, there's, the Rubbish to Runway was very successful.
Wow, it was awesome.
Run by the Friends of Easy. The Friends of Easy are gonna do like 3 or 4 major fundraising events for raising funds for our capital stuff that they are willing to do. And so they'll do Rubbish to Runway, they do Winter Festival, they do, in March, they do a yard sale kind of thing
Fun and
inside the
play day.
building. And then they also do the Fairy House thing in September. So those are their, I think that's it, their 4 fundraising things that they do. So that's good. We don't have to worry about that. And let's see, conservation agent update. Yes, so 2 things on this. Believe it or not, we have a new conservation agent starting on July 21.
What?
What
Yes.
year?
Who is this
This
person?
year.
Must have missed that interview process.
Yeah.
Well,
Really? I was there.
I didn't get involved in that either. We did interview, the way that we had it, we were supposed to, and it kind of broke down, I'm not quite sure. But I participated in interviewing 3 candidates with the building inspector, the town administrator, and Annie. I missed out on the last one, which was this one, but the first 3 candidates that we interviewed you know, they didn't quite meet all the ideas that we wanted to have for the position. The position is 2/3 planning, approximately 1/3 conservation. So they'll be putting in like 15 hours a week for conservation. And so again, I didn't participate in the last one, and then Rebecca said, you know, they're ready. It was so obvious that we needed somebody, and so they made the decision to hire this candidate.
Do we know who it is?
Yes,
Congratulations, Jill.
but,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm looking for
but I
less
don't
jobs, not
remember
more.
their name.
Are they from around here?
No. The person is a graduate student who.
From UMass?
No.
Oh, because I circulated, well, I circulated it throughout UMass.
Yes, I know you did. But let me try to get their resume and stuff and send it out to everybody, because it's
Okay.
only fair that we all know about this person.
Well, that's exciting.
That's great.
Yes. So I will be participating in the training process, and hopefully by September or so, we'll be able to stop coming into the office every week and doing all that fun stuff.
Thank you, Mike.
The other thing is the Adopt a Space program. We've got the 2 spaces at Vesey Park on Washington Street, and I received a application from the town Democratic Committee to do one of at the top of the hill in the parking lot that's at the west entrance. So they are willing to take that one over. So
To do what? What are they going to be doing?
just planting.
Plantings?
It's one of those
Flowers
adopt a
and
space, and
perennials.
then they get to put their name there thing.
To get a plaque or whatever.
Yeah.
There's a spot up there that's just been, it's in the island of when you go up the top of the hill and you drive around to go out. And it's been long, kind of not well taken care of. So I'm happy that we've got somebody who's committed to taking care of it. So that's a good thing. And
Can I have an item that wasn't otherwise anticipated?
open discussion time, yes.
So I recently obtained my permit for wildlife rehab, and I started with bunnies because you can do bunnies and still actually have a job. And pigeons, but I haven't started with pigeons yet, but bunnies, I've been going strong. And I have 3 who are ready to release. So I wanted to talk about releasing them on our properties. Potentially, Vesey Park would be a good one because it has that big field and a lot of protective shrubbery and things. They're just,
Tons of hawks.
they're wild bunnies. They'll run into predators. I mean, that's one of their roles in the ecosystem. But, so I guess I wanted to see what Concom thought about that.
There's tons of bunnies up there.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna change anything.
Probably not.
Do
but
I
they-
need Concom approval to release on Concom property, I guess?
Well,
I would say yes.
probably wouldn't be a bad idea.
Do you need to know with
formally-
each instance? Because the problem is they mature
No.
in just a couple weeks.
I
so.
think probably, what do you think, Terry? Like,
Set up some guidelines, 3 a month?
Per,
5 a month?
per site? Because I'm also going to reach out,
What
no,
are your plans here? How many bunnies are you gonna?
I
release
can't
on?
control how many bunnies, but right now I have 3 that I inherited from Tufts Wildlife, so, and they're ready to go.
Have
So-
they already mated with each other?
What? No,
The answer is
they're
yes.
like 12 weeks old. They're itty bitty babies.
Well, that happens fast.
They can have several litters per season. I mean, it's a good point, but
Just
no.
thinking like spreading them out, say you were to use a single property.
Well,
not
these 3
releasing
I
them all
wanted
in
to
the same
put
spot.
together because they came together, so I want to keep them together. But yeah, I mean, like, otherwise, the other ones are all different ages. I have a very heterogeneous
What's your estimate as to?
I'm not gonna have hundreds. This is 7.
Dozens? 7?
It could be dozens per season. I have 7 right now, 3 are ready to go. And I was also gonna talk to the state and make sure I had their approval. For example, like the Crane Wildlife Management Area, let some go over there.
So where would you be getting these?
They're wildlife rescue, so
Okay.
I already got 2 phone calls while we were sitting here from people who get my number from Mass.gov's wildlife rehabber location site. I haven't made a big announcement, because I don't want,
It sounds like
On every call.
Do you want to keep your day job?
yes, it's so hard. I had no idea, these poor people, especially June baby season, it's tough. I don't just get calls about bunnies, even though my listing says eastern, or rabbits and pigeons. I get calls about everything. I just got a call about a bluebird. I don't know anything about bluebirds, so like,
That's worth saving.
so what I have to do, exactly, but what I do in those cases is I turf them to the people that I now know do bluebirds, you know what I mean? So I'm also a diverter.
So the problem with VZ Park is that, we have things there. There's tons of bunnies, rabbits running around there, but, I'm wondering if maybe somewhere else might be better rather than adding them to the already overburdened population of them there, and, that they eat flowers and they eat other things that get planted there. Whereas a place like Center Street, we have nothing like that there.
I don't know how much cover there is at Center Street,
Oh, there's tons of it. Not,
besides the woods, like they need shrubs and grass and stuff.
yeah, have you gone there recently? There's tons of shrubbery there.
Are you talking like Wood Street or?
No, Center Street.
It's
Center
mostly a
Street,
big ball
Greenway.
field and then
No, but if
You
you,
mean
go- if
back?
you go in the front gate, the area to the left is not touched by anything, and there's it's just full of shrubs, it's just
And
full of
there's
it.
still piles and piles of rocks?
But that's over the other side.
Right, but I mean, that's an ideal place for a small rodent to scurry
they're
off.
not rodents, they're legomorphs.
I was gonna mention that, but
Yeah.
another person.
I don't know,
Exact
take a look at, go in the gate and take a look, first of all, to the immediate left, that whole area, on the left side of that roadway, kind of that goes straight ahead. See what you think there. And then also go in to our area, because that isn't really our area, but if you go into our area straight, keep going straight, you'll come to a gate, but you can go through it. And then go into that area. That's another area that might be a possibility. Not to say that VZ wouldn't work.
I mean, if
I
I,
think you're right, though. If you have the choice, stay away from landscaped areas that are,
I mean, they
intentionally
already
planted.
live there, for one thing, but, I mean, I would
the
evenly
outfits.
distribute
Yeah,
I'm not gonna let them all go in one place.
yeah, no.
Just can't let them all go in my backyard
No,
either.
I think putting like 3 in there, 10 in there would be all right, but if you were gonna put like 25 of them,
Oh,
I'd
heck no.
spread them out.
No, but,
What about up by the water tower
It's
on
pretty,
Wood Street?
that's been cut back, but the
Yeah.
shrubs have moved in. so-
Yeah.
So there's a lot of.
Yeah,
It's
I mean-
open spaces, and it's nowhere near.
Exactly. I
they're
mean,
not
I'm
gonna get
looking
run
at
over within the
all
first
of
24 hours.
Concom's property, so I'm not focusing on any one property, but certainly it has to have ground cover for rabbits. I can't just let them go to be bait for whatever
Yeah,
predator.
Yeah, you can.
Listen, they're cute.
But if you overpopulate an area, say with rabbits, isn't that gonna draw in more predators?
Exactly, that's the other reason why I don't want to
Yeah,
overpopulate
because, I mean-
any one given spot.
There was, like, 5, 6 years ago, you couldn't even, like, take 3 steps without kicking a rabbit in my neighborhood.
Same.
And then after that, the coyote, you'd start hearing about all the coyote
Gray
sightings, and then
foxes and the red
the
foxes
rabbit population kind of dwindled,
and the hawks.
and they're coming back again. So,
No, exactly.
What about putting them back where each one came from?
So you don't always know where they come from. These three came from Tufts Wildlife Center. I don't know where
Oh,
they,
okay.
how they
Could be
got
from
to Tufts
anywhere.
Wildlife Center.
And that's out in like central Mass, right?
It's in North Grafton at the vet school.
Yes,
Hmm.
I will be there towards the end of the month.
Nice.
Well, it is interesting, because you never know if these populations have like disease or something that you're then transmitting
These
to
are
our
itty bitty
local.
baby bunnies.
Doesn't matter.
It stands, though. You don't know, you don't always know what you're
Okay.
introducing.
You probably diversity, a little more diversity in the gene pool by
Exactly.
moving from one area to the other.
Or diseases.
Or disease, yes.
Just devil's advocate. I think it's great. They need to go somewhere.
I
You
mean,
can't trace it back to where they were from.
they have to go somewhere, exactly.
So you want to, do you want to put them at those three right now at VZ?
Well, I was thinking I would start at VZ, but also rotate. Like, I don't want them all to go to the same place.
Yeah.
But rotate amongst our properties,
Oh, so
Concom
why don't you
properties.
look at those other places, like Center Street thing, and even maybe Town Forest? But if you want, I'd say if you want to put the three now at VZ, that's all right.
Okay.
I don't know if everyone else thinks the same.
Yeah, it'd be nice
way.
to know what this is gonna evolve into.
Well, it's going to evolve into rehabilitating species other than rabbits. So it's just that this happens to be the starter species.
Right. There's, the cost-benefit ratio is favorable.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, we have a lot of space. I mean,
exactly.
For
And so
everything.
does the state. I just have to get also agreement from the state. And they do, they give a blanket agreement, but I have to let them know that I have rabbits to disperse.
all right.
Okay. So do we have to vote, or do we just have like a gentleman's agreement that I guess I'm notifying you that I'm letting rehabilitated baby bunnies go?
Can we put a cap on it? That's,
How do we do that, though? So then what do I do with other rabbits?
well,
Mike
Well-
Short?
Well, why don't you take care of the three right now that
there's
you got?
there's four right behind them,
I have 7 altogether at the
Yeah.
moment.
and there's probably more.
I get
right
calls
behind them.
every day
Waiting
for
to-
nests
waiting
of
to
bunnies.
experience Groveland.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'd like you to come back next time with, after looking at stuff and say, I think we can maybe say temporarily, yes.
Yes, I mean, we also have Perry Park, like, that's also a good spot
Right.
with shrubs and
Yeah,
potential.
I mean, I don't have any problem with, but I just, in order to do, I would say we should probably put it on the agenda next time to talk about all of our space, and then that, we could take a vote, but temporarily,
Conservation land.
yeah, temporarily, I don't think it's gonna make any difference.
Okay.
So I'll agree with Mike that we probably should have it on our agenda to discuss, because right now it's you, but who else down the line?
Oh, there's nobody else on the North Shore. Nobody does this crap.
Yeah, but you never know.
I get calls from Saugus to Newburyport and,
All those other people just don't put their phone number out there.
no, the state doesn't let you not put your phone number out there. Once you get a permit, your number's out there. But I think it could be a rolling agenda item to talk about how many bunnies did you
Oh,
let
yeah,
go?
yeah.
For
That could
sure.
be. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Do you need to buy more cages when you get these bunnies to keep them separated?
So I have like a Gen Pop, and then if I get one in that needs to be isolated, I have separate cages.
We had 2 male guinea pigs, and the female was pregnant the second time as soon as we found the first baby that she bore, that male guinea pig.
Those are rodents.
Already pregnant.
These are 12-week-old eastern cottontail bunnies.
And when do they go into the estrus? With
Not
puppies?
at 12 weeks.
Right about now.
No, I don't know. They're rabbits. Everybody's Googling to look.
No,
Is release part of the training and certification that you went through? Like, are there best practices with it? that they go through?
So there are mentors who coach you in, release practices,
Okay,
but there's not like a training program.
yeah.
One more thing, so I had a site visit yesterday, and it was at 324 Center Street. If you recall, remember those two lots that are like on the West Newbury border?
Yep.
They're building two new houses there. So, anyway, the one that's the furthest, right up against West Newbury, they both have been built. Neither one has filed for a certificate of compliance, but I met with the developer of the furthest one, and he wants to do some small changes from was on our orders, because they ended up moving the house further away from the wetland area, and, you know, he's wants to ask us about tree planting and some of the drainage and stuff. So
That
I
was the one
told
with
him
the
to.
culvert?
Hmm?
Was that the one with the culvert that we went around and around about?
I don't know.
That's why he's talking about drainage?
Well, what's happened is the drainage from the first house is coming down and going across the driveway and eroding the driveway, so he's got to have a way of dealing with that, better dealing with it. So he's going to write up the changes. I told him to write up the changes and come in and talk to us next month, and we can make a decision on it. I think, you know, basically, it's pretty straightforward, but, you know, if we want to, we can always go look at it, because he's not gonna do it, like, right away. And that's it. The next meeting is August 13th, not July 9th. See, I put that in there on purpose, Terry, to see if you would catch it.
Sorry, I paid way more attention to detail than big picture.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor of adjourning at
Aye.
8:09?